Well, hello again all my YouTube subscribers, and it's another very warm welcome back, and I hope I find everyone in the best of health during these very difficult times we find ourselves living in. Now, as we currently can't get out and about with our beloved old dirt bikes, I hope you're finding something to entertain you here on my classic dirt bike TV channel. Now, in this next feature clip, we're going to look at another of those immensely popular Czechoslovakian race bikes, so stay with me for the next few minutes as we check out Michael McNiven's 360 CZ. Now, this very nice 360 CZ, or CZ if you live internationally, belongs to Michael McNiven, and Michael races this bike with the Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club, and this machine has taken Michael to some very good results during the 2018 racing season. Now, as to the bike's particular year of manufacture, I'm not entirely sure, because these CZs have so many upgraded and trick parts on them these days. It's quite hard to tell if they're old bikes with new parts or if they're just a completely brand new machine altogether. But these CZs, and especially these 360 bikes in particular, are now hugely popular among vintage and classic racers. And if one of these machines comes onto the market for sale, there's never a shortage of potential buyers waiting to snap them up. But there's such a good bike to buy for classic and vintage racing because there are so many upgraded and replacement parts that you can buy for these machines. There is certainly no shortage of spare parts, so these are quite a good machine if you're thinking of taking up classic or vintage motocross. Now, the motors are a single cylinder 2-stroke piston port engine, which, if I remember correctly, had a bore of around 18mm and a stroke of around 72mm. Now, normally from the factory, these 360s would have had their fuel fed by a 32mm Jikov carburetor, which was notorious for leaks and carburetor flooding, and usually this was one of the very first parts that CZ riders would change when they first purchased a bike. And you can see here that Michael has also swapped his old Jikov for a more modern Mikuni. Now, originally these 360 CZs would have been fitted with a dry clutch, which had only 3 friction plates, which were made of alloyed steel and were coated with a special type of porcelain coating, as I recall. But these clutches were very strong, and they could transmit anything that the 5-speed gearbox could throw at it. Now, I'm not entirely sure as to why there seems to be a trend these days to remove cooling fins from the cylinders on these CZs, and you can see Michael has had 3 fins removed on his machine. Now, whether it's again for reducing weight, I'm not entirely sure, but it could even be done just to make the motor look more aesthetically pleasing. Now, back in the day, these 360 engines would have been fitted with the old Magneto PAL system with the antique contact breakers and their associated condensers. But nowadays, of course, there are CDI electronic systems available for these bikes, which are much more efficient and much more reliable. Now, the exhaust pipes on these bikes are one of the other things that get changed regularly due to the amount of damage they receive with this underslung exhaust system, where it's right in the path of flying stones and other debris that can damage it. Now, Michael, of course, has swapped his old CZ pipe for one of these more modern manufactured pipes, and as far as I know, these pipes are made in Holland and are a very popular replacement for these older Czechoslovakian bikes. Now the brakes on these CZs were good for their time as well, and used magnesium as a weight saving material to keep the overall weight to a minimum. Now a good strong steel swing arm on these 360s, and these are yet another one of the pieces that regularly get changed on these CZ bikes for something like a lighter alloy replacement. Now the fuel tank on Michael's machine looks like it's a plastic fuel tank, and as far as I know, the original CZ fuel tanks on these bikes would have been made of aluminium, although this may be an aftermarket part on Michael's particular machine. Now of course back in the day there were many famous riders who rode these Czechoslovakian machines, and there were riders like the great Joël Robert and the Russian Viktor Arbekov, who were both unstoppable when they were riding these CZ machines. But these bikes, and particularly the motors, had a great reputation for strength and reliability. Okay, they had their little idiosyncrasies and issues like any other off-road bike, but essentially these bikes were built to survive the punishment dished out on the racetracks of the world. Now if you bought one of these machines brand new in the late 1960s or early 70s, you were of course presented with a full spares parts kit, which included piston gudgeon pin, piston rings, drive chain, cables, levers, seals, gaskets and loads of other stuff. These parts were also marked and matched to your specific machine, so there was no chance of receiving the wrong parts to fit your bike. But nevertheless, when the bikes were delivered to the dealerships with these spare parts in tow, the word is that some dishonest and unscrupulous dealerships would just put the spare parts on their part shelves and resell them as new spares. Now these pictures are just a couple of pictures I grabbed of Michael when he was at this particular race meeting where I filmed his machine, and Michael really enjoys riding this CZ, and he's very quick on this bike as well. Okay, we've talked a little about Michael's machine and had a look at it in closer detail, so let's get Michael to fire the bike up and let's all have a listen to what she sounds like. Okay, I'm sure many of my YouTubers would have noticed that Michael had a different fuel tank on his bike during that start up, but still essentially the same machine. Okay, our next bike to feature here on my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel will be a 1978 Honda CR250R Red Rocket. So once again, thanks for tuning in to my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel. Please stay safe in these troubled times until we speak again here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with WorldSport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more information.